Hi, this is Chris with Sheepdog Church Security, and this is your church security roll call. Today, we have a special interview with Terry Berringer. He is the owner and operator of the Church Emergency Consulting. It's an organization out of, I'm forgetting, Northeast. Terry, help me.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Why? You just said that. Anyway.
Northeast United States. We cover all of Northeast United States.
So Terry's with us today because really he's been my go-to guy for some time on medical response. He's got a lot of wisdom in that area, lots of certifications and training in that area. He also does fire stuff. He does parking lot things. He's really done a lot of things, starting out in churches and then moving beyond that to help schools and other businesses, other organizations, is that kind of consultant to help them tighten up some of their emergency plans to ensure that people are safer. And so recently, if you've been listening to my programs, we were talking about, I made a mention of evacuation cribs. And Terry sent me a nice long email talking about evacuation cribs, telling me things I did not know and kind of expanded my knowledge. And right off the bat, I just realized, hey, this is something we have to pass on to you. So as you start to buy this kind of equipment, that you're going to be buying wisely, probably doing a lot better than I did the first time around. So that's why he's here. Lots of experience. So Terry, thank you so much for being here.
Chris, thank you for having me. It is my humble appreciation to you for bringing me on. And you make it sound like I chastised you. I really didn't. I just threw some things in there that I thought might be of thought for this process. And as far as my history goes, yes, I'm the owner and operator of Church Emergency Consulting in southwestern Pennsylvania. I've traveled everywhere from Orlando to North England, New England. Love doing it I started as a ministry. Now it's my job, and it's always been my passion. And I think that's the most important thing to have any time you're involved in, especially in security for churches, to understand that it is a gift that God has given you. It is a passion you have to have. This is not something you can go in and say, well, I was in the army, or I was a police officer, so I have to do this. That's not who we want. The best volunteers I've ever had for my volunteer safety or security teams in churches that I've developed have been non-Leo and non-military. Sorry, Chris, nothing personal. But yeah, so that's the where I've come from my company. Personal wise, I started out at the age of 15 as a junior fireman. That means when the trucks rolled out, I got to sweep the garage. And when the trucks came back, I got to wash the trucks. Woo! I started as a fireman then. And at the age of 16, I got my emergency medical technician's license. At 18, I got my paramedic license. At 22, I got my registered nurse license. At 25, I got my CRRN license, which basically says, if you look at my business card, if I had all the initials after my name, it would say continued on back of card. But for the most part, I'm just Terry with Church Emergency Consulting, and thrilled, to be here.
Yeah, it's great having you here. And you've helped, not to put you on the spot or anything, but how many churches do you think, churches or other organizations, schools, nurseries, over all these years, how many do you think you've been able to help that you've worked with at some level?
At some level, whether it be actual standing before their team, teaching their medical team or their security team or their parking team. Oh, by the way, started off doing security, parking, and medical. If you look at that, it's SPAM. For the first 10 years of my career, I was known as the spam director. So that meant there were cans of spam left on my desk almost every week. But as working with the security, parking, and medical teams, you're going to put me on the spot because I don't want to sound very precocious here, but I probably know over 1,000.
Excellent.
So yeah, whether it be, like I said, standing in front of them, teaching them, or just consulting with them online. I get a lot of phone calls, people calling me saying, hey, I have a question about this. I love talking to people, even if it's I'm not getting paid for that. I just want to help them, so I'm always thrilled to get a phone call or a text message.
That's one of the most important things about working in, for lack of a better term, in this ministry or this industry or whatever you want to call it. there's so many people that get into it for the wrong reasons. I mean, I get these calls all the time where people want to, I want to start helping churches. And it's like, well, tell me about why you want to do it. And of course, it's a business idea to them. And there is no passion in there. And one of the things that
there's not a lot of money either.
No, there isn't. One of the things that struck me about you, I mean, we met, I don't know, 2 years and some change. And you've been writing articles for us and, providing this information, that we put in our monthly newsletters. I mean, you've, like I said, at least 2 years. And one of the things I've noticed and I note about you is just that you really do have a passion for this. This is something that you actually care about.
Yes.
And it's more than just the passion. You also have the letters behind your name. You
have the
experience of doing it. And that's so important. I mean, the last thing in this ministry or industry or whatever you want to call it is, last thing we need is another person that just wants to make money, or they get out there and they don't have the experience working with churches and other houses of worship, which is really different than just about anything else out there, and having the right motivation for it. So I really appreciate that about you.
Yes.
All right.
A wise man once said, I quote my grandfather frequently when I teach, and I think I've even thrown my grandfatherisms in on some of the articles I've written for you. My grandfather once said, a wise man surrounds himself with wiser men.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what my goal is.
Yeah, we have to surround ourselves with people smarter than us. Yes. I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Well, we kind of set the bar low sometimes too. So.
All right. So I want to talk about the evacuation crib. And before you get into what you have to say, everyone's kind of waiting to hear that. What I told you a little bit about what my first experience was, the evacuation cribs I got. So, we were putting together a fire evacuation plan. And I went into the nursery of our church. It was a 2-campus church. I went into those nurseries. And what I saw in those nurseries were, 2 workers and a half a dozen kids. And I realized, we have a serious evacuation problem here, not just for fire or gas or active shooter even. If we need to evacuate, we have 2 people that are going to have to grab up 6 kids or more and run out of there. And of course, I knew that's impossible.
Do the math.
Yeah, absolutely. It just doesn't work out. So not knowing a great deal, I did a little bit of research. It seemed pretty straightforward to me. I think I went on Amazon, love it or leave it or whatever. I went on to Amazon.
Use your code if you're going on Amazon. Don't you have a code for Amazon for purchases?
I have an affiliate site, so theoretically, but yes.
Plug it.
So anyway, that's not important. What's important is so I go on there and I poke around a little bit, and I see different evacuation cribs, and ultimately I settle on a brand, and I buy the evacuation cribs for the church, or the church buys them.
Yeah.
That kind of deal. But anyway, really the only thing that I really saw there is that they were sturdy, or they claimed to be sturdy. And when we got them, they finally were. They were, for the most part. And then, of course, they had the much bigger wheels on it for it to be easier to get over some rough terrain. And that was essentially it. We got those cribs. We replaced some that would have fallen apart as soon as we started pushing them, probably.
The first door jam they meet.
Exactly. And that's what I did. And really, to be quite honest, I never really dug any deeper into that topic. And so when I got your email, and you were not chastising me, you never do, you had a lot of good advice in there, and the people just need to hear this. So if you would, talking to the children's ministry director that knows nothing about evacuation cribs, what would you have to say to that person? What should they look for? What should they get?
All right. Yeah, I'm going to throw a few stories in of purchasing cribs as well in my little evacuation crib dissertation. It's interesting because evacuation cribs are used primarily in fire drills, but you have to understand they're also active in active shooter and active intruder events. If you need to get the kids out, once again, like you said, 1 per arm. If you're a big, strong, burly guy, maybe 2 per arm. Which reminds me of, I left the class 2 days ago, and I was teaching CPR, and I had the baby mannequins, the mini, the infants, and my bag zipper broke. So I was carrying out 2 baby mannequins in each hand out the door onto the main street with these 4 mannequins dangling. Believe me, cars stop and beep the horn a lot when you walk out of a daycare center holding 4 mannequins upside by the feet. So don't do that, first of all. But they are used in both fire evacuation. And as far as our fire evacuation goes, we go by the NFPA standard, National Fire Protection Agency. And when we are doing training, I'm a PA state certified fire instructor as well. And I work with fire instructors as well. When we're talking about doing our active shooter training with the children's ministries and daycares and preschools, and actually some organizations that have daycares in their facility for their employees, I bring along one of my partners that I have here who is a homicide detective. I won't say he works for the city of Pittsburgh, but he works for a large urban police department. He's not allowed to say he works for the city of Pittsburgh. So he comes with us, and having that experience of having a homicide detective talk to you about active shooter training hits home. I can tell you all about it, and I can say this is the best thing to do it. But when it comes out of the mouth of a homicide detective, yeah, that kind of marks it in there. First and foremost, you had mentioned the evacuation cribs. You have to have so many per student or so many per child, and we'll get to those numbers in a second, as according to the manufacturer. But the interesting thing is you have to have them marked separately. I prefer chevron tape with the markings with the different colors, some type of reflective tape. If a fire does occur, once again, being a firefighter since the age of 16, and I'm now a lot older, when visibility drops to almost nothing, if you can hit it with a flashlight and get that reflective tape off, bouncing back at you, that is primary. You have to have some type of designation. The other aspect of that is, well, you've been in situations in the Army where it kind of hit the fan, and with that dopamine drop and that adrenaline jump, fine motor skills go, first response thoughts, not always right there. They could technically throw a kid into a crib that's not an evacuation crib and try to get it out the door. So you want to make sure you have the evacuation cribs marked separately, distinguishingly different from the other cribs in the room. Obviously, it would be best to have all evacuation cribs, but when you can buy a crib for $120 to put the kids in, and then evacuation crib is $400, you're going to have more of the regular cribs. Come on, let's think about that and be realistic. So you make sure that you can designate them from different cribs in a low light environment or a smoky environment. That's first and foremost, I think, huge thing to do. The other question is, you had mentioned you just bought the ones off of Amazon. The question is, do they fit through the door? I actually was working at a facility not long ago. I went there and I said, hey, they told me right up front, we bought brand new evacuation cribs. I said, that's great. They said, it took us 4 hours to put them together. I said, well, they're technical. It's okay. As I got there, I said, okay, let's see how they roll. And I started rolling them to the door, and they're about an inch too wide for the door to get out the door. No one measured. And I said to them, I said, you either have to buy new evacuation cribs or widen the door, whichever comes at the lowest cost for you. And that was, and evacuation cribs are normally a little bit larger than regular cribs. So if you're looking at a regular crib oozing the regular crib out the door, that's not an evacuation crib. You have to understand also, during a fire evacuation, you have your primary evacuation route and your secondary evacuation route. If your evacuation cribs roll great out the primary evacuation route, that's great. But what if that's blocked? You got to make sure they fit out and can go out and tolerate the travels out the secondary evacuation route as well. That is huge. And yes, you were right. Evacuation cribs do normally have larger wheels. I think the larger, the better. And there's actually some out there that actually have pneumatic wheels. And those are obviously the absolute best, especially if your evacuation route goes out to a gravel parking lot. I don't care how big those wheels are. The normal wheels aren't going to cut across that. I've seen evacuation cribs get stopped by one little pebble, and these people were pushing in a frantic, oh my goodness, there's a fire behind me kind of a concept. And they hit those rocks and they real close to dropping the kids on the floor.
Wow.
So that's the big thing. But like I said, talking about the primary routes and the secondary routes, I will mention one other thing as far as primary and secondary routes. Every nursery and every preschool and daycare and every church Sunday school has on the door a nice little map of primary routes and secondary routes. Well, if someone's not all that familiar with the setup of the building, that might really give them a hurt in the backside because they don't know where that secondary route is. I set up evacuation books, which I don't sell. You can make them for a couple bucks a piece. Send me a text. I'll tell you how to do it. But the interesting thing about it is the map's on the back. You take the book with you. You have the map with you at all times. There's a lot of times when you're going out during a fire evacuation or a active shooter evacuation and your route is blocked. If you're not familiar with the setup of the building, which I mean, as a security team, you should be, as a nursery people, you should be as well. Yeah. But people go to church, they go in one door, drop their kid off, go in another door, sit down in service, come back out that same door, go to that same door and pick up their kids. 97% of people go out the same door they go in. That's a statistic, if I can say it. So that's a big one. The daycare workers and the preschool workers and the childcare workers need to know the building. They need to know what area to go to, which way to go. Like I said, and as far as those evacuation books, if you have a evacuation crib, buy one go on Amazon, use the Sheepdog emergency code, and buy a little, I forget what they're called, chart holders, or there's a name for them. You can just screw onto the cribs, throw your evacuation book in that, and go. You don't want to have to carry it. That's huge. Another thing with those is they have a place for the class roster. They also have like I said, I'm not selling these, so I don't know why I'm doing this. They have the red card and the green card for the evacuation. The other thing, which I think is kind of cool for fire evacuation, I don't know if you've ever seen these evacuated door hangers. The nice thing about them is, and this is once again discussed with the local fire department, if the room is evacuated and the door is closed, this is hung on the door. That means when they do their primary search, they will skip this room and go on to other rooms. After their primary search, yes, they're going to come back and do a secondary search and check each room, even has an evacuated door hanger on it. But once again, Amazon, you can pick them up cheap. This whole book to make $1.25, if you have the binder already. So that's the great thing about that. Those door hangers are great. Like I said, having the map with you as you're pushing that crib down the hall and you realize all of a sudden, okay, that one's blocked. I got to spin around and go back. As far as checking with the cribs, another facility I went to work at a daycare, they said, oh, we have our evacuation cribs. We've had them for years. And it was years. They had not been moved. They had not been maintained. I said, are the wheels locked? Because I went to move it. And she goes, oh, the wheels must be locked. They weren't locked. Have you ever seen what's on the floor of a nursery? All that was gumped up in the wheels, and those wheels were not moving. So it took me a good 20 minutes to pull all the hair and who knows what, unmentionables out of those wheels, WD-40 them until they were rolling again. So you got to make sure those wheels are maintained, oiled, have sturdy, rugged wheels. Like I said, I love those pneumatic tires. They are a little bit more expensive, but once again, if you can do it, it's the best thing to do. Now, the evacuation cribs have, per the manufacturer, I gotta look here and see how it reads. Up to 5 non-ambulatory children less than 2 years old. That's the standard per the manufacturer's recommended numbers. I was at a preschool it doesn't matter where it was. And the teachers were there with their children. And there was probably 30 teachers there, and there was 11 children under the age of 2. Most of them were under the age of 1, actually. And I said to them, I would like to do an experiment with your permission, with you right here with me. I said, I would like to see how many kids I can put into an evacuation crib. you have any idea what that was?
Oh,
11.
wow.
And the kids loved it. Actually, they were having the time. They were goofing around and clamoring and having a good time. Yeah, I would not recommend that. But like you said, you walked into a room where there was, you said 12 students or
About a
10?
half a dozen. So six,
Yeah,
seven.
okay. 6, 7 students, 2 teachers. If you have one evacuation crib, you can put 6 or 7 kids in that evacuation crib without a problem. No, I would not recommend 11. That was kind of one of those things like how many people you can fit in the phone booth.
Yeah.
But
There's a lot of wisdom to that because, for one, I'm sure you would say on the front end, if the crib manufacturer is saying 4 or 5 kids, or it's got some sort of weight limit, you would be like, okay, that's what we need to plan for. We normally have 10 kids in here. Therefore, we're going to need at least 2 cribs. But it's nice to know under an emergency that if need be, you could stack the kids in there like cordwood and get them out in emergency. Not advisable, but
not
emergency,
advisable. No,
what you got to do. And so it's good to know that. One of the things you brought up, and I really like it, is, and you talk like you're from Pennsylvania, so it's very fast. So I'm going to just slow you down a little bit here. I mean, practicing drills, because it's by practicing the drill that a lot of those things that you brought up come up. If the crib's not going to fit through the door, you're going to find out on a drill if you haven't already tested that. If you do a drill and you're running up the primary route, you're going to find out very quickly how well your wheels work depending on what you're facing along that route. You talk about a little rock stopping a crib. Well, I think a lot of us have experienced that at the grocery store with the cart, right? Where it's a little thing gets caught under a tire and all of a sudden that one tire is just not rotating anymore. So, I mean, that's really something we have already experienced. But now we need to experience that on the primary route and then make it part of your drill where you say, nope, you got to use the other route. And now you're getting that other practice too off that other route. And is there a door that it's not going to make it through? Or is the pathway much, much worse? I think about one of the 2 campuses, they put in a door for the kids to evacuate out a certain way because they built the new children's section and they were upstairs. That's a whole nother conversation. But
evacuation on the steps.
Yeah, it was really silly, and they did it without talking to me. But anyway, and then I have to solve the problem. Yes, but anyway, that door was very narrow, and it was just it was just meant to be a side door. They put it in. They had to cut out the concrete, stick it in. And when it was all said and done, it's like this door should have been 6 inches wider. Once again, they didn't consult me. But yeah, these are things that we have to practice. And that's where those drills come in. That's where the route tests come in. That's where the size of the crib really comes in and you learn stuff that way.
And I can't reinforce that tactile, physical doing it experience. When I teach my Stop the Bleed class, I walk up to a person in the classroom and I hand them a tourniquet and I say, here, put this on. And they kind of look at me like, what do you want me to do with this? We go through the training of going through, and before every single student of mine walks out that door, they have physically taken a tourniquet and applied a tourniquet onto a mannequin or onto a fake leg, but they've actually physically done it and gotten yes, you did it right. Or, you need to fix this, or you maybe need to do that, something better. And at that point in time, at the end of the class, I will walk up to that exact same person and say, here, put this tourniquet on. And they'll go, yeah, sure, no problem. That tactile doing it, years from now, if that person ever says it has an experience where they need a tourniquet, they grab a tourniquet, they're going to know how to put it on because they've done it once, not up here, but here. So that's huge. And that's the same thing with these drills. You have to drill. You got to be able to get your body, once again, quoting Granddaddy, your body can never go where your mind has never been. You've got to have that training. You've got to have that thought process. If you fail to train, all you've done, train to fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's part of that whole drill thing is, sometimes we think that these drills have to be some high pressure, emergency, run, push, shove, move quickly. And it really doesn't have to be that, does it? It can just kind of be just let's walk at one time. And that makes all the difference in their ability to respond to that situation.
Even just to get them thinking. I love walking up to a daycare worker or a preschool worker and say, hey, just curious right now, if there was a fire right over there, what would you do? Just getting into their head. If what, then what? And that's, I think, a large portion of it. A lot of the training is between the ears,
Yeah,
so yeah, that's definitely it.
So this book that you offer, if people wanted to get a copy of that or an example of that so they could create their own books, how would they do that? How would you want them to contact you?
They can shoot me an email at Terry@churchemergency.com, and I'll be more than happy to send them what information I have of it. And like I said, it's a 15-minute make, that you can make it quick and easy. And this says room 401, do not remove. Well, obviously, unless there's you're taking it with you. It's attendance and evacuation. The nice thing about that is, I know a lot, the church that we've been attending for the last 20 years or so. The rooms are used multiple times at multiple days, and they might have a MOPS program going on a Monday. They have a women's ministry group on Tuesday. They have Wednesday evening studies. They have a Saturday night service, a Sunday morning at 9 a.m., Sunday morning at 10:45. There's some Sunday evening programs going on. So there's always rooms are being used. So the nice thing about that is you can just take tabs and put tabs up for whatever classroom that is. I probably should have told you I was going to use the book when we did this. I kind of threw that on you.
No, but, that's fine. No, that's great. I mean, this is something. I
forgot about it until I looked at it.
I think everything that you do and everything I do has the same intention. Is we want to give people real practical advice. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is having a book like that is a good way to inform who's ever in that room. How they, different emergency procedures, evacuation routes
is what to do in a case of a fire.
Yeah.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 simple steps, so.
Yeah. And we don't always get the opportunity to train everybody. You have a class for fire evacuation. There's going to be people that miss that training. Yeah. There's going to be people that join the ministry after you've done that
week after the training.
And so if you have this kind of thing that's in that room, if nothing else, they can at least review it or know it's there, one of the two, and then be able to refer to it. Hopefully they review it before the emergency, but if nothing else, it's just an additional way of communicating. Yeah. And when it comes to emergency procedures, it's pretty hard to over communicate what the plan is.
You need to keep it simple. I'm a big KISS fan, not the Gene Simmons group. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. And once again, when you open up this, the first thing you do whenever you do it is you're going to look at the instructions, and that's going to be popping out at you every time you open the book. So, like I said, I'm not making money on it. I'm not selling them at all, but I think that's a very simple concept that people can do for very cheap. And we all know churches are cheap.
Right. Well, money can be tight.
I'm sorry.
No, I know we all know exactly what you meant. I mean, money's tight, and we have to be very wise with the dollars that are donated and make sure that we're using them in the best possible way. And oftentimes there's competing goals. And so, the more we can kind of keep costs down, especially if when it comes time to run out and buy $400 cribs, yeah, that's something we just have to do. That's something that we have to spend the money on.
But so if we
can have a 3-ring binder, then at least we're not spending more money than we need on something that really doesn't need to be complex.
Yeah. And every ministry, whether it be the ministry of working with children, the ministry of security, the ministry of parking, everybody has that passion for their ministry, and they think their ministry is the ministry that needs the most, and their ministry is the one that should get the money. You got the whole big picture to look at. And sometimes I commend people when they are very passionate about their ministry. That means they're doing what God wants them to do. So I always love when people are like, "This is the best ministry." Well, okay, I might say that about mine too, but that's where God gives us gifts. We've been given gifts, and I've been given great gifts of having all these trainings in my past and all these certifications and licensures. Those are gifts from God. I need to share those. If I just sit there and go to work every day at the hospital and come home every day, I'm going to be miserable, because that's just a job. This is a ministry. This is a place where you can take the gifts that God's given you and further the kingdom. And that you can't put out enough. Sorry, I'm getting a little passionate here.
No. I mean, it's a lot of people. I mean, the people that listen to this program are people that have a passion for safety ministries.
Yeah.
And we all come at it from different angles, and we have different experiences, different talents and gifts that we bring to the table to help make the congregation safer. And it's really it is that passion that we all have. And this is kind of the platform here, is to talk about not only the passion and the motivation, but also talk about, what our skill levels, our skill and talents are. Like I said, the whole point of this was that you knew way more about evacuation cribs than I did.
And a normal person should.
Right, than any normal person should. And so, and that's where it's the sharing of the knowledge. It's sharing wisdom. It's sharing those talents and those gifts. And it gets to be a lot broader than just our own church or, the few people we have contact with. Now this can kind of go out nationally. And I got to imagine there's a lot of people listening to this program right now, and they're just like, I didn't know that. Who knew that evacuation cribs were more complex than just big tires? And, I think about the one church you talked about where the crib was about an inch too big. Boy, that's kind of a mistake I would make. They looked good on Amazon, right? They look good. Everything looks fine. And you just forget one little thing.
Did you not measure and you just got lucky? And is that what you're saying?
I got lucky. I did not measure anything. They looked good. They sounded good. They had good reviews. It never occurred to me to measure the doorway.
My friend, God was with you.
Fortune favors the foolish sometimes. So, Terry, excuse me, everyone. I want to give you the last word. So going back to our children's ministry leader, or maybe our church safety director who's looking at cribs, anything else that you want to share about cribs?
I would honestly just try to get out there and let, as a security team director or security team member, make contacts with your children's ministry leaders and the children's ministry workers. Let them know you're not their enemy. You're not there to yell at them and correct them and chastise them. You're there to help. When a situation comes up, it's the old sheepdog concept that they a lot of times people don't like the sheepdogs because they look a little bit like wolves, and they're always out sniffing the perimeter. And to quote Mr. Grossman, Colonel Grossman. So in that situation, we need to befriend our children's workers. We need to let them know that we're there to help. How can we help them? And matter of fact, that might be the best opening line ever. How can I help you? Whether that be walking down the street, talking and meeting somebody for the first time, or talking to your children's ministry workers. How can I help you? So that's the first thing and foremost. If anybody does want to contact me, Church Emergency Consulting is my company. Churchemergency.com is my website. You can contact me, Terry at churchemergency.com, and I'll be happy to share not just about evacuation cribs, but parking teams and a whole bunch of other things that I have a huge passion for, that I would love to help people out with.
Excellent.
Especially since you're out Midwest, I'll take the East Coast.
Absolutely. We'll put what in the show notes. I'll put in your email and your contact information so people can get down there and get that. I would definitely, audience, contact them, at least check out this book, figure out, how you're going to adjust it, how you might be able to use it. And I think it's going to go a long way in helping you in case of an evacuation, helping those people. I think the other thing is Terry made a mention of, sometimes we can have kind of a little, I don't want a friction between us and other ministries. Here's a situation where I predict very little friction, because you're talking about buying them all new cribs.
Yeah.
And so hopefully they're completely in support of that. And that's
going to be happy.
Yep. And that's the easy button for you, right? That's the easy button to help them and prepare them to evacuate those kids, because you have a lot to worry about during an evacuation, and you want, especially the children's ministry, to go well. So other than that, I'm going to let you all go. Thank you so much for joining us for this special interview. Other than that, have a great week, and hey, let's be careful out there. This program is made for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice.